What's going on YouTube? Now, the RAV4 finished ahead of the CR-V and Rogue last year in terms of sales, and one of the possible reasons for that is that Toyota has been offering a hybrid model for the past 12 months. For 2020, there are a few changes, and of course, we do want to take a moment to thank our friends at Frankfort Toyota for providing us with this fully loaded example. And if you're in the market for any new Toyota, make sure you stop by their dealership or visit them via their website. So with that all said, let's go ahead and see if this hybrid RAV4 is the RAV4 to get. So starting out here with our exterior design, just like the gas-powered RAV4, you will notice a kind of rugged look, as well as a couple different types of grille designs here. So your upper two trims, which are your XSE and your Limited, they have this gray finish, and if you go for the lower two trims, they have a plainer black finish. The other exclusive Limited thing is this silver accent down here at the bottom. And also if you go for the XSE trim, you will have some piano black accents all throughout the vehicle. Now, as far as your headlights, these are actually a little bit different than the gas-powered model. Now, they do remain fully LED across all of the trim levels, which is nice, but what's different is just a couple of finishes inside the headlight. You have these little squiggles, and you have the bulbs instead of the crystal design. And then as far as your fog lights, you will have these halogen fog lights on all but the LE. Now, as far as your wheels, these are actually also a little bit different from the gas-powered model, but not for the better. And that's because this Limited trim, it tops out at an 18-inch alloy instead of the 19-inch ones you get on the gas-powered model. Now, the XSE also has an 18-inch alloy. It has a blacked-out design, and then your lower two trim levels, those come with a 17-inch alloy. Now, moving on from that, we do have a hybrid badge. It is blacked out on this specific model. And then as far as your mirrors, they are heated with blind spot monitoring and the turn signal indicator on the majority of models.
Now here at the side of the RAV4 Hybrid, you are going to find a few exclusive features. On this Limited, we do have chrome door handles, and I do want to point out, if you like that sportier look with the XSE, that will get the blacked out roof, which is a really, really nice touch, especially for a car in this segment. And then walking around to the rear design, it's actually no different from the regular gas model in this hybrid configuration, which is a great thing because I think it's very handsome. We have LED taillights, and one of the things that I really want to point out is that on the hybrid, you still do not lose the dual exhaust pipes, which is quite nice. The only difference will be the blue Toyota badge, as with any Toyota hybrid. Now, the RAV4 has always put itself as a very safe vehicle in the class, and that continues with this hybrid model since it does have Toyota Safety Sense 2.0 as standard equipment across all of the lineup. That means you have adaptive cruise control, lane keeping assist, forward emergency braking with pedestrian detection, auto high beam headlights, and also low light pedestrian detection and lane tracing assist with road sign assist. Well, that's it for the exterior of this 2020 RAV4 Hybrid, so now let's go ahead and hop inside and see what's new in there.
So walking up to the RAV4 Hybrid, of course you will find Toyota Smart Entry System, which is standard on all but the base LE model. And then to get inside the vehicle itself, there's a sensor behind the handle, so all you have to do is just grab it. Alright, so taking the first look inside this 2020 RAV4 Hybrid Limited trim, as you can see, it does have a very premium look. Now, of course, your color and material options will vary with the trim level. So starting with your LE and your XLE trim, they will have cloth seating with the choices of black, nutmeg, or gray if you go for that XLE model. As far as the XSE, that comes with the Soft Tux faux leather in black only, and the Limited also has the same thing, but has some extra color options, gray and nutmeg. And as you can see, we have this really cool looking color contrast design. Now turning over here to your door trim, it is also upscale looking. So you have a leatherette that covers all of it from the top to the bottom, and you even have a genuine stitching detail which runs all through here. 2-person memory seating is standard on the Limited, and all 4 of your windows are one-touch automatic. And coming down here to your seat, this is an 8-way power adjusting seat with 2-way lumbar support, and this is newly standard for 2020 on the XLE and above. And then, like I was already saying, this is Toyota synthetic leather. Feels pretty realistic, and also once again, very nice design here with the 2 different colors. Now glancing around the cabin, the premium vibe does continue on this Limited model especially. So across your upper dashboard, all the RAV4s are going to have a soft touch plastic, and when you drop down to the middle here, you have more of this leatherette with the genuine stitching detail. Now as far as your lower areas, those are going to be hard touch, but in typical Toyota fashion, everything fits together without any panel gaps and feels very solid. And then to start it up, press the blue button on all but the LE. Now, of course, as you can probably tell, this being a hybrid, the engine does not necessarily fire up. There it goes, it just now fired up because it is cold, but you can start up and start driving around, of course, on your EV mode. Now let's talk about the gauges here. They are a little bit different than in your gas-powered RAV4. So as you can see, you basically have this indicator here. It shows where when you're running on battery power or when you are on the engine power. And then over here you have your traditional stuff like engine and gas gauge. And then you have a 7-inch display in the middle if you go for the XSE, or the Limited, a 4.2-inch one comes on the lower trim levels. Now coming back to the steering wheel itself, of course you have electric power assisted steering, and it is leather wrapped on the XSE and the Limited trims. Steering wheel will always be manually adjusting. However, heating as well as rain sensing wipers, those are both available in the weather package, which is optional on the XLE and up. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about storage, because this is one of the RAV4's strongest areas. So we'll start out underneath of the center console here. You do have a little removable tray, and inside here, as you can tell, it is extremely large. You do have a nice felt lining at the bottom, and so long as you go for one of the trims, besides for the base model, you will have 2 charging USB ports inside. Up in front of that, we have 2 really deep cup holders, and then another large storage area with a rubber lining up here, another USB, a 12-volt outlet. And then in addition to that, we even have a storage shelf over here in front of the passenger side. So it definitely has plenty of storage for all your needs. Now as far as the shifter here, this is just a traditional shifter instead of the electronic one like in some of the competition. And then you can bump over here to the left to shift through some manual simulated gears, but there will not be any paddle shifters on any of the models. Now heading into reverse, there are several different backup cameras. Your lower trims will just have the fixed path. When you go for the XSE or higher, that's where you'll get the dynamic guidelines like you see here. And then on the Limited, you can also option on the bird's eye camera, but we do not have the advanced technology package. And then you do also have an automatic emergency parking brake as well as a brake hold feature. And then back behind that, we have a few different drive modes, as well as a button here to lock it into EV only mode until it depletes the battery. Okay, now let's go ahead and check out the climate controls. Now this is one area that's a little bit different than the gas-powered RAV4, and that's because even the LE hybrid model will come with the automatic dual-zone climate, whereas the LE gas model comes with a manual setup. But nevertheless, this is super simple to use with 2 large dials here and all your buttons physically laid out. Additionally, we also have heated seats. Those are standard on XSE and the Limited trim. And this Limited has the additional option of adding ventilation, but we do not have it on this specific model. And now that brings us up here to our audio systems. Now, one of the 2020 changes for the Limited Hybrid is that the previously optional JBL Premium audio system is now standard. That comes with 800 watts and 11 speakers. So let's go ahead and take a sample of that. I have to say, I am very impressed by this audio system. It's certainly one of the best I've ever heard in this category of vehicle. Okay, so let's take a quick look around the Entune system here. This is the latest Entune 3.0. And of course, when you go for the Limited trim or the XSE, that's where you'll get the 8-inch display versus the smaller 7-inch display on the lower trim levels. Since we have the Limited trim, we also have the dynamic navigation system as standard equipment, and as you can see, it is very responsive. Now, one change that impacts the rest of the lineup is that now, for 2020, you have Android Auto in addition to Apple CarPlay standard across the board. Now, heading on up from here, you will find an auto dimming mirror with HomeLink universal remotes on XSE and Limited. However, Limited exclusive, if you flip that switch, you go into the rear camera mirror system, which cuts out all your obstructions. And then finally, for this interior, we do have one noteworthy 2020 change, and that is that the power moonroof is no longer standard on the XLE Hybrid. You will have to add that back on as an option. And then in addition to that, you can get a panoramic moonroof on the XSE and the Limited as an extra cost option. Alrighty, so that is going to conclude all the front areas of this RAV4 Hybrid. So now I'll go ahead and hand it off to Mason to check out all the back stuff.
Now, hopping in the rear seat of the RAV4 Hybrid, obviously this is a very important feature of any car in this segment, and the RAV4 does a really good job back here. Now, as long as you opt for all but the very base LE model, you will have a very good equipment level here in the rear, since Toyota throws in the rear vents, as well as these 2 smart charging USB ports on all but that very base LE model. Now, in addition to that, Toyota does also give you the option of heated rear seats in the Limited trim through the Weather package. And as far as the space itself is concerned, you're going to find 38 inches of rear legroom and 40 inches of rear headroom, which does place it behind the Honda CR-V, but about the same as the Nissan Rogue. And behind rear seating position, you're definitely not going to have very many issues back here. I have about 7 to 8 inches of rear legroom, and my feet can easily slide up underneath the seat. And it is worth noting that these seat backs do also recline. Now, walking up to the tailgate of the RAV4, it is power on the XSE trims and higher, and there is optional foot activation on the Limited trim. We do not have that, so in order to open, just push the button under the lid. And once inside the RAV4 Hybrid's trunk, you might think that you have a reduced amount of space due to that extra battery in the powertrain, but that is not the case here, since we do have 38 cubic feet of space behind the second row seats and 70 cubic feet with the seats folded. Like I was mentioning, that is not actually a reduction over the regular gas-powered model, which is really quite nice. And as far as how that aligns to some of its competition, that is a little bit less than the CR-V and Rogue. However, Toyota does finish it nicely back here with a cargo cover. And up underneath of the floor, we do have a spare tire. And off to the side, we do have a 12-volt outlet, as well as some lighting. Now, over here at the passenger seat, you are going to find a manually adjusting one across all of the trims, which I do know that the CR-V does throw in a power passenger seat, so that is a little bit of a con there. However, in front of the passenger, we do have a decently good-sized glove box. It is dampened. And up top, we have a light and mirror, and the sun visor does also extend, as well as detach. But anyway, guys, that sums up all of the small differences for the hybrid on the exterior and interior. So now let's go ahead and take it out on the road and see the real difference as compared to the gas model.
Now, of course, when you take off, you are in the EV mode, so there's no noise whatsoever. So there's 60 miles an hour. I have to say, takeoff is pretty good. Just like the gas-powered model, this actually feels like one of the more powerful offerings in the class. Now, this hybrid model is actually more powerful than the gas-powered model by 16 horsepower. It has 219 total system horsepower. And it is using a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, naturally aspirated, paired with a nickel hydride battery and electric system. And everything seems to really work together quite well. You know, just the transition between electric power and the gas engine, it really hands off seamlessly. No hesitation, nothing weird feeling about it. Now, that is one difference you will notice with the hybrid model versus the gas-powered model. You're going to trade in your 8-speed automatic transmission for a continuously variable transmission. Now, to some people, that bothers them or whatnot. This is a good CVT, though. As you can tell just by the way it accelerates, it does get the engine right into its power band quickly, and then quickly backs it back down. I also don't notice really any type of weird rubber bandy effect when you get onto the throttle, so there's not really any delay or anything, any hesitation that's going to bother you while you're driving.
And you know, one thing about that too is that a lot of its competition, like the CR-V, it comes with a CVT straight from the gas model too, so you know, really it's pretty much class competitive to have a CVT, and that's what they've opted for in this hybrid.
I'm checking off gently here. I'm trying to get us seeing kind of where the line is, where the engine kicks in. Yep. Looks like it's about 20 miles an hour, so actually, so long as you don't really hammer down on the throttle, you know, out in the city driving and stuff like that, you can reasonably stay in the electric mode quite a bit, you know, just in traffic and whatnot.
You know, and of course we have been talking a lot about, you know, its hybrid components and stuff like that, but this is still the same RAV4 in terms of driving dynamics as well as its ride quality. You know, so in this RAV4 Limited, you are going to find exceptional ride quality for this class of vehicle. Obviously, these are very family-oriented vehicles, so it's important for them to be comfortable, and the RAV4 does really a great job with that. It's very quiet and comfortable in here.
Going over that bridge,
Yeah.
you can't really feel anything. Yeah, the ride here on this limited model is really feels the class above what type of vehicle this is.
In here at highway speeds, I have gotten out our sound level meter here that measures the decibels entering the cabin, and we're going around 50 miles an hour, and basically what it was reading was around 55 decibels here at cruising speed, which we actually have been in the Mazda CX-5 and did this, and that's actually a little bit lower than that at cruising speed, but pretty much about the same. So we'll see how it is upon a hard acceleration here in a second. Alright, and we got up to 69 decibels from 55. So you can do the math there, that's 14 decibel increase. But what I will say is when the engine kicks in, if you're really pushing hard on the gas, it does have quite a bit of noise that penetrates into the cabin. So that's just something to keep in mind. That's a little bit more unrefined than stuff like the CR-V in this class. So just keep that in mind when you're, buying a RAV4.
Right, like we've said, we mentioned that in the gas-powered one, that same thing does apply to the hybrid, but less so because, you're not listening to it as much because you're in EV mode. And for 2020, Toyota has done a few different things with a little bit of extra sound deadening. Not a huge difference, but they have done something.
Maybe they watched our 12 RAV4 reviews.
Now the positive attributes from the gas-powered model do carry over to the hybrid, and including within that is the handling. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Toyota's TNGA platform and their new steering setups are really good. This is one of the most natural and nice feeling steering setups in a crossover in this category. It's really responsive. I mean, look at that. Just a little turn off center and you have immediate response. That's just super uncommon for this type of vehicle, which is just known for having totally dead steering. So I do like that it's both light, it's still family oriented, but very responsive.
And finally, finishing us off here, I do have a couple things to talk about. For one of the major differences between the gas and the hybrid model is that the hybrid comes standard with all-wheel drive. So that's just something to consider when you're looking to buy one. And secondly, of course, that's going to be your fuel economy. That's going to be the major difference when it comes to the hybrid, and you are going to find exceptional fuel economy with this model. It's rated at 41 city, 38 highway, 40 combined. You heard me right, 40 miles a gallon combined out of a crossover like this, which is absolutely insanely good. And that's the reason that, a quarter of all RAV4 sales are, the hybrid, because it just makes a lot of sense. You have an $800 price increase, and you get 40 miles a gallon as opposed to, I don't really remember what the regular one is, but it's in the 20s. So, big increase.
Yeah, so overall, I got to conclude the same way that I concluded last year, which was that when you go shopping for a RAV4, you need to check out the hybrid model. The price increase over the regular model is quite small, and you're getting a lot of benefits here over the gas-powered model.
Alright, now let's go ahead and discuss the pricing. So you might be curious as to how much of a price increase this hybrid model is over the regular gas-powered model, and I'm happy to report that it's only $800 on an equivalently gas all-wheel drive model. So that's really not that much, which is why this car sells so well. So for the very base LE trim, that's going to start at $28,100. The XLE is going to be $29,395, which is down $300 over last year. Then you have the XSE trim, that's $34,050. And then finally you have this model, which is the Limited, and that's going to be $36,630, which is worth noting that's about a $1,000 increase over last year. Now we do have a few accessories, not too many option packages though. So we have the blackout emblems for $175, body side moldings $209, carpet floor mats $269, door edge guards $140, and mud guards for $129. And then we add the destination charge of $1,120. This particular model, as equipped, comes in at $38,672, which is, that's a pretty steep price point, I have to admit, especially for a Limited that, it's not fully loaded. The hybrid Limited can easily top $40,000 if you check off all the packages, which definitely positions it as the higher offerings in the class. But you are still getting a lot and a really fantastic fuel economy with this RAV4 hybrid. Well guys, we hope you enjoyed watching this in-depth look at the 2020 Toyota RAV4 Hybrid Limited. We really appreciate you watching, and if you made it this far, hopefully that means you enjoyed the video. So be sure to help us out by hitting that subscribe button down below, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.